Hi, it's Andrew from Remote Aviation Australia, and in this video tutorial I'm going to explain to you how to use OzRunways, which is an excellent source of aeronautical information. The good thing about OzRunways is actually what they call an electronic flight bag, or an EFB. And what this EFB, the good thing about this EFB is actually approved by Australia's legislation, in particular Civil Aviation Safety Regulation 175, as an approved source of aeronautical information. What that means is you can use the software in this app as a sole means for your documentation and maps and ERSAs and everything like that. The good thing about it being an approved source of information is you know that the data contained in the map and the documents is up to date. Why that's a bit of an advantage is it means you don't need to keep paper copies of everything. You can just keep this EFB on your iPad and use that for your flight planning. So throughout this briefing, I'm going to show how you can use OzRunways for your RPAS operations. So I'm not going to go into all the features that apply to manned aviation pilots or anything like that. We're really just going to have a look at what applies to certified operators. Now, to access OzRunways, there's really two apps that you want. If I go into the App Store, the main thing that you'll need is up the top here, we've got OzRunways EFB. Now, this is a paid app. Initially, it'll be free to download, but to subscribe, it costs $99 a year. I'd recommend subscribing directly through the OzRunways website, as you'll save about 30%, because Apple and Google, they'll add their 30% on top of that if you try and subscribe through the App Store or Play Store. Now, $99 might seem like a lot, but in my opinion, it's actually pretty good value, because what this means is you don't have to go buying maps twice a year. You don't have to buy ERSAs 4 times a year. And that's going to instantly start to save you money. The good thing too is it's going to contain all the maps you need, so you don't need to buy multiple maps of the area or anything like that. And it's also going to be quite efficient, as you'll see when we go through it. So it's going to save you your time as well, which is obviously quite valuable as an RPAS operator. So as I said, the first thing you'll need is OzRunways EFB, which is at the top. And a secondary app you might want is Runway Check, which is there to the left. Now, Runway Check is a fairly simple little app we'll have a look at. It shows you, airspace considerations for RPAS operations. There are a few little limitations, and we'll talk about that throughout this tutorial. And the last app you might want to consider, it's to the left, the bottom left-hand corner down here, it's NAIPS. This is, again, put together by the OzRunways team, and it replicates the NAIPS web-based application you can get, and allows you to obtain weather forecasts, NOTAMs, that sort of thing. So as a certified operator, I would recommend this app as well. The last two that we've looked at, NAIPS as well as Runway Check, they're both free. As I said, OzRunways is a subscription-based service. For Runway Check to work, you'll actually need a subscription to OzRunways, so the two are interlinked. So you do need OzRunways EFB for Runway Check to work. Now, going back into OzRunways, what it starts to show you instantly is I've got displayed up here an aeronautical chart in the form of a VTC, or a visual terminal chart. It allows you to zoom in, and it shows you, the good thing is it starts to show you all the airspace information which you'd expect to see on a visual terminal chart. So what we can see around the place instantly is I can see the airspace limitations, the lower limit of controlled airspace. And the other great thing about OzRunways is it actually takes all the helicopter landing sites and aerodrome landing areas, or ALAs, and actually overlaps them onto your visual terminal chart. If I just quickly snip to a video showing you the Brisbane area, you can see that it actually doesn't have as much information on the real visual terminal chart as it does if I cut back to OzRunways. You can now see that there's a lot more helicopter landing sites and everything labeled on the chart. So to me, as a RPAS operator, I think this is great. This gives me extra information about all the helicopter landing sites. Similar sort of thing, if I flick over now to Runway Check, you can see a very similar layout. It gives you the visual terminal chart again, gives you all the helicopter landing sites. But the good thing about Runway Check is it's designed again for RPAS operators. It actually gives you any departure and approach paths, as well as your 3 nautical mile restrictions around controlled aerodromes. So if I start to zoom in, and if you go in too far, you go to a street view instead of the visual terminal chart. But what it's doing is it's showing me the departure and arrival paths for all these helicopter landing sites around Brisbane. If we have a look around Brisbane Airport, you can see it's actually drawn in red, that 3 nautical mile exclusion area, which complies with the legislation that says, as well as your operations manual as certified operator, saying you can't fly within 3 nautical miles of the movement area of a controlled aerodrome. As a result, Runway Check, it's a very good app in giving you that basic airspace information. It's a little bit different to CASA's app, Can I Fly There? So just take a quick look at this, burn it into your memory, because I'm about to show you CASA's app. If we look at CASA's Can I Fly There app, again, it's quite good. It's showing you all the helicopter areas. It's giving you those 3 nautical mile exclusion areas around Brisbane Airport, Archfield Airport, those sort of controlled aerodromes. But you'll notice it's missing something, and it's missing the airspace information that was contained on OzRunways, which we just saw. The reason for that is CASA's Can I Fly There app actually isn't an approved source of aeronautical information. And if you go through and read the disclaimer and everything, it states that. It says they can't guarantee the accuracy of the information, plus they can't give you all the airspace and visual terminal chart information that you'd expect to see in OzRunways. That there is quite a big difference between the two. And as a result, Can I Fly There, this app from CASA, it's really designed for your recreational users as well as excluded RPA. If you're a certified operator, I would recommend OzRunways because it's going to give you that extra bit of information, which we'll look at shortly. If you want to learn more about CASA's Can I Fly There app, we have got a separate video tutorial about it. Flicking back to Can I Fly There? As I said, you've got the visual terminal chart information, and it'll give you the 3 nautical mile exclusion area around controlled aerodromes. Now, the only thing to consider with OzRunways is how it measures the 3 nautical miles. What the legislation states is that you can't fly within 3 nautical miles of the movement area of a controlled aerodrome. What the movement area includes is anywhere basically an aircraft can be on the ground, so any taxiways, aprons, that sort of thing, as well as runways. The way OzRunways depicts the 3 nautical miles is actually from, I guess, what you call the aerodrome boundary, or where the fence for the airport would be. So it's drawn a 3 nautical mile line, and this is a great little thing I love about OzRunways, is you can use 2 fingers to draw a ruler, and you can see you've got that 3 nautical miles basically from the fence line out to the boundary there. So that's doesn't exactly comply with the legislation, because we said, 3 nautical miles is from any movement areas. So you might actually find that the 3 nautical miles from Brisbane, a movement area could be from there to there, the 3 nautical miles. So you could actually fly within the red depicted area. So it's up to you to do a little bit of extra research. My suggestion though, is if you're using 3 nautical miles from the boundary or from the fence, like it's being depicted here, it's a more conservative approach to flying, and you'll definitely be compliant with the legislation. But just be aware that the actual legislation says it's 3 nautical miles from the movement area, not from the boundary of the airport. Other things to consider is we have a look at some of these helicopter landing sites. So for instance, here we're looking at one near Enoggera. If I tap on it, it tells me what the helicopter landing site is, and in this case here it's Enoggera. And if it's got that little picture to the right there, which kind of looks like a binder or a book, if you press that, it can actually give you some more information about it. And in this case here, it's giving us an ERSA extract of Enoggera heliport. So this is really useful information. It gives you who the operator is, or the controlling authority for it, and also gives you other good information. If you have a look towards the middle there, it gives you the CTAF, or the Common Traffic Advisory Frequency. So if you were going to operate, in the departure approach paths or very close to that airport, in compliance with your operations manual, you may need to broadcast on the radio. That's the frequency you're going to need. So you might be asking now, well, what are these 2 colors? What's the red mean? What does the orange mean? All it's depicting is the approach and departure paths surrounding that helicopter landing site. So I'm going to flick up again a picture now. This comes from the CASA's Advisory Circular 101-01, and it's showing you 2 things. You can see there's a black area as well as a light grey area, and that's showing you your no-fly areas basically, or what would be an approach or departure path. So the black area, it's a radius of 500 meters from the center of the helicopter landing site outwards, and basically you can't fly there at any height. If you have a look at the grey shade area, again, it says you can fly there as long as you don't go above 45 meters or 150 feet. And that's above ground level. And if you think about, if you read further into the advisory circular, they say you should actually base that on the elevation of the helicopter landing site or the aerodrome that you're operating within or near. I flick back now to OzRunways. The colors are just a little bit different. So the red is that black area we previously looked at, and the orange is that light grey area. Similar sort of thing, if we now go up and look at a non-controlled aerodrome, for instance here we've got Redcliffe Airport. If I tap on it, again it's giving me Redcliffe. And again, if I hit the little binder, it gives me information about Redcliffe, which is really cool. But what it's showing again is two things. I'll put up the advisory circular diagram now. And it's showing you that black no flying area. And that's depicting, what the actual approach and departure path to the runway is. And you can see it lines itself with the runway orientation. So no matter what height you're flying your RPAS, you can't be anywhere within that black area, which stretches out to 3.7 nautical miles, or 3.75 nautical miles. You've also got that bit of a race course pattern, again, very similar to the helicopter landing site diagram. You can fly there as long as you don't go above the 150 feet or the 45 meters if you prefer to use meters. Going back to OzRunways now, you can see similar sort of depiction, except the only thing is, again, they've used red and orange instead of black and grey. Now the other interesting thing, and this is a little bit of a discrepancy between OzRunways and CASA's app, Can I Fly There? If I, again, use my two fingers to measure the distance, what we end up having is from the end of the runway through to the end of the departure and approach path, you've got that 3.75 nautical miles. So that's fully in compliance with the advisory circular. This is a little bit different to what's depicted in CASA's Can I Fly There app. In CASA's Can I Fly There app, they've got a slightly different approach and departure path. And this departure and approach path for a non-controlled aerodrome is actually inaccurate. I don't know why they've used this or why it's in there still. I've been told that there was an intent to change the advisory circular to incorporate small aerodromes and large aerodromes. So a small aerodrome like Redcliffe would have a smaller approach and departure path, but that's actually not any law or anything like that. So what it's showing here is an approach and departure path that's a little bit inaccurate and doesn't comply with the legislation. To illustrate what I mean, if you have a look, you've got the Bruce Highway, which is this, big line, yellow line in the middle of the screen there. And you can see the approach and departure path for Redcliffe goes nowhere near it. It stops sort of somewhere over North Lakes. If I switch back over to Runway Check, which I said was compliant with the legislation, you can see it goes well and truly past North Lakes and over towards the Bruce Highway there. So that's a little bit of a difference between CASA's Can I Fly There app and OzRunways. And as I said, OzRunways is more accurate and actually complies with the current legislation. So this is an excellent tool to use for giving you that basic information about runways. As the name suggests, Runway Check is the name of this app. That's all it does, is it checks your position with respect to a runway and aerodromes and helicopter landing sites. What it doesn't demonstrate to you is any restricted areas, and what I mean by that is it doesn't tell you whether a restricted area is active or not active. And a good example is if we have a look at the Green Bank firing range down here, it's got Romeo 633 Alpha, surface to 2,000 feet above mean sea level. That's a restricted area. And as per the legislation, we can't fly an unmanned aircraft in a restricted area unless we got approval from the controlling authority. But if you were to, some restricted areas are actually subject to NOTAM, which means they might be active some part of the day and then not active other parts of the day. If a restricted area is not active, it means you can fly in there. But as soon as it becomes active, you can no longer fly in there. So using this part of the app alone, it's very difficult for you to determine whether a restricted area is active or not. That's where you kind of have to juggle between some of the apps. CASA's Can I Fly There is quite good because it will tell you any current restricted areas. So again, this is Greenbank, and it's actually restricted because it's in red. If I tap on it, it'll give me a bit more information, or if I drop a pin, there you go. This is a restricted area, do not fly in here. As we said though, Runway Check, it doesn't confirm the status. The good thing is, if you then go back to the primary OzRunways app, it does tell you whether an area is restricted or not, or whether it's currently active. So you can see it's all shaded there in that light red color, which is telling me that Greenbank firing range is currently active. If I hold my finger on it, it gives me a whole bunch of information down the bottom there. Romeo 633 Alpha Greenbank, service to 2,000 feet. If I press that, it's giving me some information about that. So at the moment, I couldn't fly my unmanned aircraft through that restricted area because it's currently active. Another little difference I'd like to demonstrate between CASA's Can I Fly There app and Runway Check. If I go to Runway Check first. Now, any aerodrome that we've looked at, non-controlled aerodrome, so it could be a helicopter landing site, it doesn't actually depict any 3 nautical mile rings. For instance, you can see if I measure out 3 nautical miles, there's no ring around it. Similar thing if I go down to an aerodrome like Southport, again, that's a non-controlled airport, it's this one here. There's no 3 nautical mile ring around it. They've got approach and departure paths, but nothing else. That's different to CASA's Can I Fly There app. If we go down there, we look at Southport, we've got a 3 nautical mile ring around it. If we have a look at any helicopter landing site, same thing, we've got a 3 nautical mile ring around it. Now the reason why there's that difference, and I bring it up, is it's showing you the difference in rules between a certified operator and a non-certified operator. So with the direction that came from CASA in October 2017, it says unless you're an REPL holder operating under the conditions of your REOC, you can't fly within 3 nautical miles of a helicopter landing site or an aerodrome if you're aware there's an aircraft operating there. So that 3 nautical mile restriction to non-controlled aerodromes and helipads only applies to non-certified operators, which is who they've aimed Can I Fly There at. So that's why that's depicted in this app, but it's not depicted in Runway Check, because they're assuming Runway Check's going to be used by a certified operator. If you're a certified operator, you can operate within 3 nautical miles, as long as you comply with the procedures in your operations manual. So that sort of restriction doesn't show up. It's something you just need to be aware of. Other good things about Runway Check before I move on is it does give you all the ERSA entries. So down the bottom here, you can see it says Map, ERSA, AIP and Settings. All I did was click ERSA, and it gives me all the different extracts for different aerodromes around the place. So for instance, if I was going to operate near Caboolture Aerodrome, I just click that, and it gives me the runway information. If you look up towards the top right hand corner there, it gives me the elevation of the aerodrome, runway layouts, and CTAF, that sort of thing. Close that. The other useful thing, a really useful thing to use the ERSA for is prohibited, restricted and danger areas. So again, you might identify that you're going to be operating near a danger area or a restricted area and you want to find out more, you need to go to the ERSA to get that information. The way you can obtain that is you need to just scroll all the way down to the bottom of this part, or if you look in the bottom right hand corner, there's like a little book underneath Y. I'm going to press that now. And it gives me further information from the ERSA. What we want to go into is PRD areas. I tap that, and here we go. So it gives you that extract from the ERSA. So before we looked at Greenbank, which was Romeo 633 Alpha. And if you look towards the middle of the page there, we've got it. It says Romeo 633 Alpha. It's an RA3, service to 2,000 feet. And it tells you that its hours of operation is daily, 2100 to 0600, or as amended by NOTAM. Who the controlling authority is, it's the Army RCO from Greenbank, and why it's a restricted area, it's because it's a military non-flying area. If you wanted to, you can see there's the 42 next to Army RCO Greenbank. That's the phone number or contact details to get in contact with the controlling authority. you just need to scroll down and you look up number 42, and 42 is towards the middle of the screen there. It gives you the phone number, so that's who you'd call if you wanted to get permission to operate in that restricted area. So not a bad little app. As I said, it only depicts aerodrome information and gives you that departure and approach paths. It doesn't give you any information about restricted areas. If you wanted to get that information about restricted areas, that's where you have to go to OzRunways. And as we saw, it tells you whether a restricted area is active or not. The other good thing about OzRunways is it gives you all the maps across Australia. So if you're outside the range of that visual terminal chart, you can go and download some other maps. So let's say we want the information around Coffs Harbour. At the moment, because I haven't downloaded the map, all it's given me is a street view. And it's downloading very slowly. If I wanted to get the chart for it, actually the way you download it is there's a little icon down the bottom and you pick the sort of map you're after. So I want to go to, let's try visual terminal charts. And we got Coffs Harbour at the top there. I press that and it downloads Coffs Harbour VTC. Once you've downloaded it, you can view it offline as well. You don't have to be connected to the internet. OzRunways by itself, it's aimed at manned aircraft pilots, so it doesn't give you all the RPAS approach and departure paths. That's where you have to go to Runway Check to look that up. But as I said, this is an approved source of aeronautical information, which is quite useful. Other things I like OzRunways for is if you want to look at the WAC, so WACs cover areas outside of the VTCs, you can change to that sort of map view. If you're operating, let's say way out somewhere west, you can, like Lightning Ridge, if you wanted to get further information about the airspace and everything, you can look up things called ERSA, download that, and that can give you, who the Brisbane Centre frequency is, any restricted areas nearby, that sort of thing. And as you can see, there's actually not a lot around Lightning Ridge, which is good. The other thing I like about OzRunways, and I'll flick back to the WAC, is the top, towards the top there, you've got a few icons in the top right hand corner. There's the one that looks like a storm. And it actually gives you a radar overlay. Now, it takes a little bit to download, but I find it quite useful because it can tell you any sort of bad weather or lightning that's moving through the area. And you can see there's actually a few lightning strikes that have been recorded out towards Lord Howe Island. There we go, now we can see it all starting to download. If we zoom in and have a look around Port Macquarie, it looked like there was a little bit of weather moving into the area there. So that can be a nice little thing to help with your situational awareness. There we go. What the map's also showing you is around the Williamtown area or Newcastle area, that big red thing. As we said, it will display restricted areas. That's showing you a big dirty restricted area at the moment, so we couldn't fly our RPAS in there. The last thing I'd like to demonstrate to you is how to get your documentation. So instead of having to carry around ERSAs or look up AIPs and that sort of thing through the website all the time, you can access all that info straight away through this app. And the way you do that, if you look down the bottom of the screen, you've got Scratchpad, Airfields, Documents, and AIP. Let's have a look at Airfields first. And again, like what we saw in Runway Check, is it gives you all the different ERSA entries. So let's pick a different one this time, random. Let's have a look at Ballina. There's the information for Ballina Aerodrome. Gives you the layout, who operates the aerodrome, as well as CTAF and other sort of frequencies. If I go back, Documents can give you other information. So if you want to look up the legislation, such as the CASRs, any sort of advisory circulars, you can look it up in there, and bingo, here we go. So we got AC 1011 or AC 10110 for excluded RPA operations. So instantly at your fingertips. You can get that information from the legislation. The last thing is AIP. If I tick that down the bottom, it gives you all the different information about the AIPs. You don't really need this a lot as an RPAS operator. It does give you the format for radio calls that could be quite useful, as well as Gen 2.2 gives you definitions and abbreviations. So if you come across something you don't understand in a NOTAM or in any sort of general aviation literature, you can look it up here. So that was in Gen 2.2 of the AIPs. If you want to look up further information from the ERSA, it's actually in the documents. And then up towards the top, you've got Air Services 09 November 17. That was the latest ERSA that had been released. And when we recorded this, if I click on that, it gives me all the information from the ERSA. And the good information we saw we needed before for a certified operator is PRD areas. Gives you all that. And other information that you might want to use, we talk about fly enabler areas. If you look up that in the special procedures, it'll give you all that sort of information too. So overall, I really recommend OzRunways. We use it a lot for our planning. It's brilliant. It allows you to very quickly see the airspace that you'll be operating in. It lets you grab some information from the ERSA very quickly. And if you use it in conjunction with Runway Check, as we saw, you can actually find where the approach and departure paths are. And the other brilliant thing is you can use 2 fingers to work out how far you are going to be away from an aerodrome or approach or departure path. As we said, the issues with using Runway Check is all it does is it shows you information with respect to aerodromes. It doesn't give you any sort of information about restricted areas. If you want information about whether a restricted area is active or not, we said you need to go back into the main OzRunways. And finally, we said it all differs from Can I Fly There? Can I Fly There? It's aimed at your excluded RPA guys or your recreational users. So there are a few more restrictions shown in this app. And we said, Can I Fly There? It's not actually an approved source of aeronautical information. So you can see it doesn't give you any airspace, specific airspace information, which we saw in the VTCs. So go ahead, go and grab these. As I said, there is a free trial initially. See whether it works for you or not, but I can't recommend it more strongly.